As mental health professionals, continuous learning is key to serving our communities. And sometimes taking continuing education courses, it is very difficult to find the ones that resonate with us. The Multicultural Counseling Institute, which hosts this podcast, is renewed as an APA CE sponsoring organization. This means continuing education courses at the Multicultural Counseling Institute are eligible for APA CE credit. We've created programs focusing on culturally competent care, especially for people of color, and with instructors who bring both knowledge, experience, and practical wisdom. It's about empowering your practice and uplifting your community, so exceed your continuing education requirements with purpose. As a thank you, listeners, you get 50% off with code FRIENDS50, all caps, FRIENDS50. You can visit www.tmcinstitute.org to explore our live and on-demand psychology CE courses. Now onward to today's episode. Today we have a very special guest with us, LeNaya Smith Crawford. She is a licensed therapist and holistic mental health educator with over a decade of experience. LeNaya holds a master's in marriage and family therapy and specializes in trauma and spiritual integration, blending clinical expertise with holistic healing practices like yoga, breathwork, meditation, and sound healing. She is the founder of the Holistic Therapist Academy, which supports therapists and healers in integrating holistic, trauma-informed methods, and the co-founder of 7 Yoga in Atlanta, Georgia. Her work is grounded in honoring the whole self: physical, energetic, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and helping others reclaim their wholeness and build sustainable, purpose-driven practices. So with over a decade of experience, LeNaya's impactful work has been featured in major publications like the New York Times, Essence, the Huffington Post, and she's even appeared on national television, including Bravo. As a Black and Jamaican American therapist, LeNaya will be discussing ways to integrate holistic practices as part of our therapeutic work with clients. LeNaya, thank you so much for being on our podcast, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here because you're trained as a LMFT and a yoga instructor.
Yes, yoga instructor, breath work, sound healer, all the things.
Oh my gosh. So, that's a lot of training, right?
Yes.
And so I'm thinking a lot of our listeners who are therapists, we're thinking, wait, some of us have already gone through our master's, some PhD. I'm not so sure many of us want to get additional training. And, maybe some folks do, but I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not so sure I want to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we dive into some of the way in which you integrate holistic practices, why don't you just share with us what you're currently doing clinically?
Yeah, so I have a private practice called Kaleidoscope Therapy and Holistic Wellness, and I specialize in working with ambitious women, therapists, and healers who are navigating life transitions. They might have gotten to a certain place in their life and career and are realizing that they've put themselves on the back burner for far too long. So that's what I specialize in my therapy practice. But one of the main things that I'm doing right now is teaching and training other therapists on taking this holistic approach to the way that they work and how to ethically and confidently integrate practices like yoga, breath work, and sound healing into the work that they do. And in addition to that, reminding therapists and healers and mental health professionals that we have to prioritize our self-care and healing. There's so much burnout in our field, and I think that we have put our clients and our work above ourselves for far too long. And so something I'm really passionate about, in addition to what I stated before, is reminding us that the same holistic care, the same compassion that we extend to our clients and our communities, we've got to reflect that back to ourselves.
That's such an important point because we're here to help folks. Oftentimes we neglect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many therapists nowadays, especially, actually, I would say during the pandemic, have really leaned into the self-care element. And so Can you share with us your approach? What makes your approach unique?
So what's interesting is the same approach that I take in therapy and I train therapists in is the same approach that I teach them how to care for themselves, which is a holistic approach. Because a lot of times when we're talking about self-caring for ourselves, we're really limited into what that looks like. So when you ask a therapist or a person in general, what do you do for self-care? What do they typically say? Oh, I take a nap, I go on vacation, I may go get a massage, I may work out, maybe I'll make sure I'm drinking enough water, eating nourishing foods, which are really great ways to self-care, but you're only leaning into one aspect of your self-care journey, which is the physical, right? And so if we want to create sustainable self-care practices, we have to take this holistic approach to the way that we care for ourselves, right? And so when we're only leaning into one layer, we're limiting ourselves to the healing that's available to us when we prioritize our self-care and healing. And so when I talk with therapists about taking this holistic approach, it's not just the physical, but again, it's the energetic, right? How are you
Ah,
caring for yourself
okay.
energetically, right? The mental and emotional, how are you caring for yourself mentally and emotionally? It's the spiritual layer, how are you caring for yourself spiritually? And then finally, communally, how are you caring for yourself in relationships and being in community? And so that's how I like to approach really everything that I do, is taking this holistic and integrative approach to not just the way that we work as therapists, but the way that we self-care as therapists as well.
Got it. So you're seeing this truly as having a lot of different connections. So, for example, you mentioned most people might say, "Oh, I take a vacation, I do this thing, and I focus on these external physical experiences." However, I'm not really linking it to, well, if I were to take this vacation, what's the core of me doing that? How do I make it intentional? Is it because I am taking a vacation, I don't know, to a water theme park, or am I taking a vacation to my ancestral like land or something? Or like there needs to, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Maybe some life vitality or some life energy that's connected with what we're doing.
Yes, and also not looking at self-care as somewhat of an escape, because a lot of times we think that in order for us to self-care, we've got to go somewhere. We got to go take a vacation. We got to go travel somewhere. But I believe that we can integrate self-care into our everyday lives. And when we can integrate it every day, even if it's for like 5-15 minutes a day consistently, what you find is it's easier for you to not burn out. It's easier for you to hold space for your clients and yourself and all the things that we have going on when we're intentional about integrating it consistently every day, as opposed to, I've reached my limit, I'm about to leave the field, I'm about to like implode, right? And that's when we decide to, do something about our mental health and healing.
Yeah, it's preventative and it's intentional. May I ask, as again, I'm overgeneralizing here. Many therapists don't, seek out therapy themselves. And so when
Yeah.
you're training other therapists to integrate holistic practices within themselves,
Mhm.
may I ask how you integrate your own philosophy within yourself?
Oh, yes. A big part of being a holistic therapist and a big part of what I teach is embodiment, which is essentially you being a living, breathing example of what you're teaching and integrating for your clients. And so I have to be the example for my students, right? And so for me, it really is about being intentional each day. I'm grateful that I've gotten to a space where I can have, a 60-minute practice each day, but then we also have moments where, life is life and I only got 5 minutes for myself, right? And so little things like taking a practice that could focus in on one area. So I'll give an example. I love the sauna. The sauna is one of my favorite things to do. And so when we talk about taking a holistic approach to self-care, I'll stack things on in the sauna. So I'll start my sauna session with some breath work. So the infrared heat is really good for your physical layer, but I'll turn on a sound bath, right? I'll start with some mindful breathing. And then I'll also kind of journal, reflect, and, pull some affirmations while I'm in the sauna. So I take this session that could only be focused in on one layer and I stack on other things to make it a more holistic experience. Something more simple, and this is something that I've done, it's been ingrained in me since I was a child, is, waking up and expressing gratitude. Thank you, God, for waking me up this morning. Thank you for the activities of my limbs. Thank you for another day to get it right. And so starting my day, something as simple as starting my day with gratitude is a practice that helps me stay grounded in self-care. And so those are two very simple examples, but also, one of the recent things that I've been doing is gardening. So really being able to be outside, feel the sun on my skin, get my hands in the dirt, take care of plants, So that's also something that connects me with God, with nature. I'm getting that physical aspect. I'm getting that energetic aspect. So those are just some examples of the ways that I care for myself. And I am someone who has experienced burnout in addition to healing from other things. And it's not a place that I ever want to go back to. And so when I'm teaching therapists, like, hey, these practices are so powerful for your clients and your communities, but they're just as powerful for you because you have to be able to hold space for you and what you're navigating and hold space for whatever your client's navigating. And if you're not grounded, you're not centered, it's going to be so much easier for you to succumb to compassion fatigue, overwhelm, burnout, and all the things that, we're susceptible to in this field.
Yeah. Yeah. You're really making it an active effort so that we can prevent the burnout process. And
Yes.
you having gone through it, recognize the importance. Maybe it's too late. I'm responding too late. Oh gosh, I'm just now catching up. So, and it's unfortunate that happened. I'm sorry it happened to you. On the flip side, if I may, as a result of that experience, you've been able to learn and basically craft this system essentially to help other therapists.
Absolutely. So a big part of the work that I do is because I experienced deep depression. I've navigated trauma and loss in addition to burnout. And it wasn't until I took a holistic approach to my mental health and healing that I really was able to experience joy, freedom, and authenticity in a capacity that I never thought was possible. So yes, I've got the clinical training and I've got the training and all the modalities and all the things, but I also bring this lived experience. I've experienced the healing power of these practices. I've experienced the healing power of not just focusing in on my mental and my physical, but truly focusing in on all layers: physical, energetic, mental, emotional, spiritual, and communal.
Yeah. There's two key categories of experiences that I hear you say that is very unique, which is the energetic piece and communal.
Mm-hmm.
We don't pay enough attention to the energetic piece. And when we think about community engagement, it's so difficult nowadays.
Yeah.
Loneliness is such a major issue. And so the idea of trying to find community spaces is increasingly more difficult. So you've touched on some of your experiences now. Specifically, if I may, can you share with us any memorable events and circumstances that influenced how you got into this work?
Yes, so there's a couple. Well, first and foremost, I have to say that this whole idea of, taking this holistic approach, typically mind, body, spirit, was something that was ingrained in me since childhood. So I'm the daughter of two pastors. And so it's always been ingrained that, listen, you got to tap into your mind, your body, and your spirit in order for you to truly heal. So I always love to start there. I was, grew up in that. And so one of the places where I really started to, find practices that really embodied this mind, body, spirit approach was in grad school. So I went to a graduate school that actually taught you how to integrate spirituality, biblical and Christian principles and spiritual principles into your work as a therapist. And so had that piece, but also graduate school is really hard, y'all. Like, you remember that? Like,
Oh my
it is
gosh.
hard. And so in grad school is really where I found the practice of yoga and breath work more seriously. I had dabbled in it and, in college, but it's really in my master's program where I really was able to see, man, it's not enough to just feel the emotions and process the thoughts, but there's some other things that are coming up inside of me in this transitional period of learning how to be a therapist and all the things. And so when I found yoga, it found like there began to be somewhat of a balance and an embodiment of this mind, body, spirit approach that I had grown up with, right? So I always tell folks I have just as much training and practices like yoga, breathwork, sound as I do as a therapist. I actually graduated with my master's along with becoming a yoga teacher. And so as you get your CEs for therapy, I've also expounded
yes.
it. And yeah, so it goes
Yes.
it goes hand in hand for me. So I think those are two memorable experiences. But I do have to point out this one experience. You get to practicum and you're seeing clients and you've got your supervisor. And I had a supervisor where I was sharing like, hey, I have, some clients where I really think that they could benefit from, some movement, some mindful breathing, some yoga. And I was like, I'm learning more about yoga. And I think that this could be something that I could integrate with them. And my supervisor was like, yeah, these practices can be helpful, but there's a time and there's a place. You're a therapist. You need to focus in on the therapy. And how about you just recommend that they join a studio, or you recommend that they go and do the yoga and do the whatever outside of therapy. And so that was where it really clicked for me, that not everyone had that same thought process of, no, why can't I bring these things into the therapy room? Why can't I hold space for this for my client instead of just simply referring out? So that was definitely another memorable moment in this journey.
Yeah. And I think that we get locked into a specific lane because our professions have certain labels, right? It's like, oh, I'm practicing under my LMFT license and I can only do, and I put air quotes, LMFT type of work, which does not include yogic work or, it's, as I'm talking out loud, it's mind-boggling because when people talk about mindfulness and meditation, oh wait, we can do that, but then we can't quite do some of the, yoga sun salutations. It doesn't quite make sense for me, okay, as I'm talking out loud. But that's how we're trained to, stay in our lane. And of course, after we get licensed, we can do our thing, but then we're also pushing the boundaries. So there is a risk, but you're trained. The key thing is you're trained in both.
Right. And that is what I overemphasize. You have to think about your scope of practice. And that's really one of the reasons why I created the Holistic Therapist Academy, because it's not enough for, we as therapists and trained licensed professionals to, okay, I took a CE class, or I saw something on YouTube, or I know that I've experienced the healing power of these practices. Now let me try to integrate it into session, which I see a lot. Now that's unethical. That's where the risk is, right? You've got to make sure that these things are within your scope of practice, right? You have to be able to understand, okay, there are certain breathwork techniques and yoga postures and chakras and things that don't work for certain diagnoses, right? And so it's really important that if you're interested in this work, that you do seek out training from someone who understands not just this holistic integrative world, but also this clinical world, because it's really important that we're abiding by our scope of practice and also our ethics, our duty to be ethical providers and practitioners.
Yeah. So throughout your journey, I'm thinking in grad school, which we hear quite a bit, which is lack of representation. And then you compound that with also being a yoga instructor, which we know, I mean, I've done yoga for many years, and I have never met a yoga instructor who is Black. And so I'm going to state this question, obviously, as a person of color, what were some challenges that you faced and overcame that you would be willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, man, I talk about lack of representation. I mean, my grad school program, like I said before, was based in integrating spiritual and Christian and biblical principles into therapy in Georgia. So I was one of few Black students in that program. And even in my yoga teacher training, it was me and one other person of color, period, in that training. And so for me, really one of the reasons, or the main reason why my husband and I opened our yoga studio in Atlanta, is because there really was a lack of diversity and representation of, people of color doing these practices. And when you really understand the roots of yoga, this is a brown and Black practice, right? The roots of yoga are brown and Black. And so I think that, part of being a yoga teacher and being, so open about these practices is really allowing people to see themselves in me. And one of the beautiful things about our yoga studio, and people say it all the time, I've never been to a yoga studio with so many, most of our teachers are Black and brown. Most of our teachers are teachers of color. And
I love it.
I know, I love it too. And we were intentional about creating a space where everybody felt that yoga was for anybody, not just the skinny white girl, which unfortunately that's when you think about yoga in the West, that's what you think about.
Yes,
right?
yes. When you think about this, even, in research papers, they're talking about, yoga and meditation. They're saying, oh, wait, you're talking about white therapy. It's like there's specifically, I'm like, oh, no, it's not. This originated from Black and brown, India, that's where it happened, yoga.
Yes. Oh. And that's the interesting thing, a part of this work is also decolonizing the lens and understanding that, no, these aren't white practices. These are practices that our, ancestors were utilizing. This way of being are practices that, our Indigenous and African ancestors knew, right? And so that's also a really big part of it is yes, there's a lack of representation, but we have to, it's almost like reclaiming the power of these practices, reclaiming it. It's it's not a Western, it's not a white, it's not a European thing. It's Indigenous, So that's, hopefully I answered the question. I think I did.
You did. I just got a little bit lively with your, with your training, and this is a great conversation. So now for you, what does it mean to be a Black and Jamaican American therapist?
Yeah, I mean, continuing that conversation of representation and also breaking the stigma, because not only am I Black, listen, I'm the product of immigrants, right? And so therapy, mental health, we bring it all to Jesus, okay? What is this therapy thing, right? And so for me, I really have a lot of pride of being, a Black and a Jamaican therapist, because it really is showing my communities that we too can benefit from this healing power. And a lot of the things that we sit with, the generational trauma and the things that we think are just a part of our lived experience, are things that we can begin to break and to shift through taking this approach, right? Through attuning to our mental health and healing. And so for me, being the only therapist in my family, it's been really beautiful to see mindsets shift and change, right?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, coming from a family of pastors, I mean, how is it like for them to know that you're doing therapy?
Yeah, not even just therapy, but doing, the meditation.
Also, yes, yoga. It's oh my gosh, yeah. I it's oh wait, I don't want to be possessed. I'm not trying to put a dig. I'm just thinking about, this is what yoga and meditation can be perceived from different cultures.
Yes, absolutely. And, a big part of, the work that I do is, educating my, people of faith and religion that it's the lack of knowledge, right? You don't understand something, so you automatically demonize it. So a big part of, my work with my family, with the people that I train, is we've got to understand a little bit more about these practices and not just be scared of the unknown, right? And so my parents were, I think, my first students teaching them, right? Teaching them hey, actually a lot of yogic philosophy, a lot of these practices really actually align with a lot of biblical principles. And we actually talk a little bit about this in the Holistic Therapist Academy as well. But my parents are super open, which I'm grateful for. So they trust that they raised their daughter right. And so they know that I've always been this curious, inquisitive person. And so it's through modeling, it's through conversation, it's through pulling up scripture that really has allowed them to be you know what? okay, maybe some of these things aren't for me, but I'm not going to demonize it, right? And also, maybe these things actually are for me, and I actually do need to lean into my mental health and healing a little bit more. And so through this process of having conversations and being open and aligning it with biblical principles, I've been able to lead talks at their church about mental health and healing. I've even done a sound bath for their youth department and some breath work, right? And so it really is about educating and being open and understanding that a lot of times it's just fear of the unknown as to why we think that things are demonic or against our religion. But if you can be open, if you can have open discussion and be open to learning, you start to see that actually a lot of these things align with what we grew up around and what we were taught.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible because you also have the framework. And this
Yes.
speaks to the whole context of culturally informed treatments and practices.
Yes.
We listen to clients, we listen to our parents. What's the language or philosophy they hold, and how can I meet them at their place,
Exactly.
experience, and then share my experience with them? And of course, so lastly, I'm thinking about, this journey this community that you have created, this academy, this ongoing journey that you have instilled within yourself, modeling, right? What's the word you said? Embodiment? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that word. Yeah.
Yes.
So this embodiment that you are participating in, a lot of this takes work and effort. So how can we support you?
Yes. Well, you can support me in many ways. I think the free ways that you can support me are, following me on socials, joining my newsletter, keeping up with me and the offerings that I have. But if any part of this conversation has sparked interest, if you're like, yes, I want to take a holistic approach, I want to learn more about ethically and confidently integrating these practices as with my work as a therapist, checking out the Holistic Therapist Academy, which is my certification and immersion program specifically designed for therapists, healers, and mental health professionals who want to take this holistic approach, learn how to bridge together these different worlds and do it in an ethical and confident way. And then finally, I'm really excited. This year will be the first annual The Holistic Therapist Conference happening in Atlanta, October 24th through 26th. And so this will be an opportunity to bring together therapists, mental health professionals, and healers who are taking this holistic approach or who are interested in taking this holistic approach and really being able to find supportive community, learn some really cool, learn about different techniques and tools, earn some CEs, experience the healing power of these practices, and really just be in a space where you can feel supported, you can be curious, and earn CEs while doing it. So
wow.
Those are a few ways to support our work.
That's phenomenal. And let's see, can folks register? Do they register online?
Yes. Yeah. So if you go to my website, LeNayaSmithCrawford.com, you'll see information about the conference. You'll see information about, all the different things. So whether, you join my free Facebook group or you decide to join the academy or join the conference, any of the other fun things I have going on, definitely it'll be on my website for sure.
Great. We'll definitely include that information on the show notes. Any final thoughts for today?
I would say that if you have been feeling the call to expound your work as a therapist, if you feel like you've been limited in any way, or you feel like there's just a new approach that you want to take, I would say follow that feeling and know that the same healing that you have done can also be of service to your clients and your communities. And, take a holistic approach.
Fantastic. Well, LeNaya, thank you so much for your time today. A huge thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please share and subscribe to People of Color in Psychology. You can also support us by registering for continuing education courses or making a one-time donation on the Multicultural Counseling Institute's website. Your feedback is important to us, so feel free to send an email, a message on LinkedIn, or leave a voice message on our website. Until next time, this is your host, Jack Sun.